Oh, whatever you prefer. Yes, by all means, stand, sit, yes.
Just mind this right here. Approach the grave. Be here. If you face each other at this point and just keep carrying this over the top right here. Keep those. We're going to do with your family.
Shamayim Ba'aretz Ezri Me'im Adonai Oseh Shamayim Ba'aretz Esaheina Yehari Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Esaheina Yehari Me'ayin Yavo.
We are gathered here today to both celebrate the life and to mourn the loss of Larry Rappaport. Reading through his memoirs, I was struck by something that he wrote toward the end. In his words, "Please do not feel bad about this, because I have come to terms with my future, and I hope that you can as well." Of course, when he wrote this, he was referring to his Alzheimer's diagnosis. But I think those words are equally fitting for today, as we are here to mourn for him. Of course, many of us here are sad. We are devastated. When we announced his death last week, which happened on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of our Jewish year, those who were present in the sanctuary can confirm that there was an audible gasp through the entire congregation at the news. I'll venture to say why. Despite his 94 years and the knowledge of his declining health, the gasp happened because none of us could imagine life without Larry. He has touched so many lives so deeply, as a testament to how many of us are here today to say goodbye to him. It is only natural that despite his instructions not to, we do feel bad about this. But let us take some solace that Larry was at peace with his own mortality. He ended his life ready to depart this earth. Last week, with his beloved Norma by his side as always, he listened to the Kol Nidre service, which the rabbis teach is meant to be a rehearsal for all of us for our own deaths. And after hearing that service, just a few hours later that night, Larry left this earth. We will hear today from those who knew him best. First, I would like to call on his grandson, David, to offer a poem.
So my grandfather was a special and nurturing and loving grandpa. And he was a great man and a great horticulturist. And so I'm going to read a poem called When Great Trees Fall. It's by Maya Angelou, and it speaks to the process of loss and recovery that all of us are embarking on right now. So when great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shatter. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizen. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us. They existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for they existed.
What a perfect poem to honor Larry's life. And we now turn to our tradition, to Psalm 23. If you do have a handout, they're not necessary, but you will be able to find Psalm 23 on it as well. And these Psalms that we imagine are written by King David. And like many of our biblical ancestors, King David is one who is extraordinarily flawed. But one of the gifts that he gave us, if we believe that he was the author of all of these pieces, is that the Psalms go through every emotion known to humankind. As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that is what Psalm 23 says. And it reminds us that we can't undo the things that brought these feelings on. If we could bring Larry back, I think it's fair to say we would. But instead, what this psalm reminds us is that while we cannot control life, we can control how we respond to what life throws at us. And part of that is being in community with one another and telling stories with one another. And so we'll recite these words from Psalm 23. Adonai shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. It's now my honor to call up Debbie and to share, and Joel, to share some remarks about Larry.
David, if you also want to come up with your email.
Thank you all for coming, for being here to honor our father, our grandfather, our beautiful community member, our professor, and it goes on and on and on. Lawyers and something important. Children. So I want to share with you some feelings that I have about Dad as he met his challenges with dementia. He was as he aged, he became more and more of his inner self, more acceptant, more patient, more loving, more his essence. And Craig and Meryl and I think all grew to have some really close times with him. And maybe times that we didn't have when he was a young, dynamic professor and community involved person. So I want to just share with you a few glimpses. I was very lucky to be able to come and do chair dancing with my dad and play Frank Sinatra, and Mom would sing the accompaniment. And he loved and was buoyed by all that. He loved his garden, and one of the things he did as he aged that he could do was, we all loved seeing him immerse himself in the pool, and he would emerge a young man and he would sing songs at the top of his lungs, and it was just so joyous. He just like brought everybody in. And my sister, I mean, she was incredible. Every day she was there doing countless things, understanding, being responsive. She was the one who was responsible for helping my parents stay in their home and live such a full life. And Craig, Dad just clicked with Craig. I mean, his smarts and his wit and his loving nature, his generosity, all of this. And he was so attentive and so present in the end, and gave Dad so much, respect. So, Mom, we don't even have words for who she was to Dad. Dad so appreciated her. Now I'm going to tell some words. Dad so appreciated her. He loved her delicious food, and he would say thank you every time she served him something. She was so solid and caring and warm and brought people into their lives, which Dad loved. He was always a people person. While she was doing this, she brought the whole family in, and she was warm and loving and supportive and in tune. So I guess I could go on for a while. I didn't think I could ever get up and talk, but I will say that my dad, as his illness took him and he declined more and more, his connection to himself deepened, and he became just love. Everybody that walked into the house just loved him. They went right to him. He was so happy and so on. It's like his illness was a catalyst to him being his best self. So I just have to say that right now, as I stand here and I see all of you, I just feel his presence so strongly. Yes, I mourn him, but I feel he just is always with us.
Hello, I'm Joel. I'm one of Larry's grandsons, and I always got the impression that my grandpa just was constantly creating relationships, and I see that here, and I know there's a lot more here in the world that he was connected to. And And so he's someone to aspire to be in a lot of ways. And in his life, I think I really admired him and wanted to carry on a lot of what he did in any way that I could. So I'll share with you a little something about that. In his desire to support others and make the world a better place, Grandpa knew no borders. In Egypt, he retraced the footsteps of his father, ignoring national tensions and navigating bureaucracy to empower the people. And I'm sure that he ate well. At home, he and Grandma always kept an open door, so much so that when I followed Grandpa's footsteps while studying abroad, there was always an open door to adopted family for me. And for us, he had no limit of love. It was always so easy to hold his hand, share a chocolate, have a laugh, and walk away with a nugget of wisdom. We are all here together because of his wild curiosity to cross a continent. What else can one expect from a redhead? And the most precious belonging he always carried with him was his family, all of us here today. And I will carry his love with me.
I'm David. I'm Debbie's husband. I'd like to thank you all for being here today. I'd like to thank the rabbis for all their efforts. And I'd like to especially acknowledge the remarkable other mother, Norma, my other sister, Meryl, my brother, Craig, and of course, my wife, Debbie, whose love and care shown Larry over these past months and years has been absolutely limitless. There is a unique restaurant on a boat, San Diego Bay, where in 1984, 38 years ago, I was to have my first dinner with Norma and Larry. You can call it the introduction of the new boyfriend dinner. Larry and Norma having just arrived from Adelaide, Australia, and me from work. But the real introduction to Larry, in this case, started a couple of hours earlier. In the cramped bathroom in the house where Debbie lived, Larry and I, newly acquainted, shared the sink and mirror. Freshening up for the evening meal, I'd knocked on the door and he exclaimed clearly that I should come in. That totally warm, natural encounter was the start for both of us of a lifelong friendship. One of openness, mutual respect, sharing, male bonding, serious discussions at times of difficulty, intellectual banter, clearly a feeling that we were in this thing called life together. As you all know, you cannot choose your in-laws. But in this case, I would have chosen Debbie's parents unconditionally. What ensued over the years following the first meeting in the first bathroom resulted largely from the person that was Larry. A man who stood by my side always, not just as a father, but as a brother, a friend, a guide, an inspiration, an advisor, oftentimes by what he refrained from saying, rather than what he did say. Always generous of spirit, always greeting me with openness, joy, and a loud exclamation, someone who I always felt understood the path of life and shared in its challenges. Thank you, Larry. And thank you most of all, together with Norma, for the gift of your beautiful daughter, Debbie. You are truly one of the heroes in my life. And while I will miss your presence, your laugh, your smile, your invitation for a l'chaim, you will always be with me, alongside me, as I try emulate the admirable things you accomplished in your life. Please know that your spirit will always live on in the finest and most genuine of ways. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Now it's my honor to call on Dr. Kent Bradford, one of Larry's colleagues at UC Davis. Dr. Bradford, are you here?
It's tough after some of these wonderful things. First, my condolences to the family, Norma, all of you. I appreciate the loss. And I'm really honored to be asked by the family to represent faculty, colleagues at the university that I worked with and knew, befriended since his beginning at the vegetable crops department in 1956, and subsequently as chair of that department from 1979 into the 1980s. Larry's tenure as chair at that time coincided with a whole-scale turnover of that department. It had been populated right after war and earlier, and that whole cohort of faculty were retiring, and it was Larry's role then to replace all of that and make a completely new department at the time. And I have to say, he relished this role. He invested enormous amounts of time into the recruitment interview process, always with a view to what would best serve the needs of the department and the College of Agriculture in UC Davis. He's a very, of course, public-spirited person, as I'm sure you can tell by now. I'm sure I speak for many of my, or for all of my colleagues, absolutely every one, many others outside the department who Larry inspired and motivated by his leadership, how much we appreciate the chance we had to know him and work with and under him. As one of my colleagues noted, he always appreciated Larry's friendship and sage advice, and he had a vision for both the department and the campus, and we worked very hard to achieve that. It was not uncommon for Larry to just walk into your office and ask, "How are you doing?" But with Larry, this was not just an idle opening to a conversation. He really did want to know how you were doing. He was asking out of sincere interest. I'll never forget that. He might be laughing, joking, whatever, but underneath that was a sincere concern for us as people and as faculty, and a strong desire to help us to be the best that we all could be. He advised and encouraged and cajoled as necessary, but he also led by doing, and no one worked harder than he did to support his faculty and provide them with the resources they needed, connect them with others who could expand their capabilities. He exhibited the same concern for and investment in the students that we were teaching, always open to visiting with them and offering his advice and encouragement, ensuring the relevance and timeliness of our curriculum. Before he became the chair of our department, Larry had already had a productive scientific career. He was a pioneer in studying the roles of a plant hormone called gibberellin in plant growth and development, and particularly in the dormancy of plant organs and buds. His expertise in this area is particularly helpful to me as a seed biologist, as this hormone also plays a key role in regulating seed dormancy and germination. So I felt there was a link between me and him. In the last couple of days, I've read much of the memoir that Larry wrote after his retirement. And in it, he covers family history and married life with Norma and their children and grandchildren, his career, and what he calls musings. I encourage you to read this document, as it reveals both how adventuresome Larry was in pursuing novel experiences and how these escapades generally involved encounters with other people. In reading some passages in which he addressed his grandchildren, I came across a line that I will leave with you today. It seems to express the core of Larry's personality and life goals. Again, this is from his own memoirs. It says, "Openness with others is a key to a loving and happy life." Thank you for the opportunity.
Our last speaker will be Robin, Larry's daughter-in-law, who is going to read a remembrance from Dr. Sheldon Schuster, the president of the Keck Graduate Institute of Claremont Colleges, was unable to attend in person, but prepared some words that Robin will now share.
Well, I'm not as cute or as funny as Shelley, and I'm sure most of you know him, so you can attest to that, but I'm going to try to be Shelley today. So he says, I apologize for not being with you on this day, but unavoidable circumstances have intervened. Susan and I regret not being with you today because Larry meant so much to both of us. I came to UC Davis in 1965 from San Mateo, pretty much like any college freshman, naive, scared, and lonely. As soon as I moved into my room in the Aggie Villa Quonset huts, I immediately joined Hillel. I helped weed the backyard of the new facility. I did some painting and general cleaning, but I became active because of the warmth and camaraderie and the bagels and lox. I had never before met a scientist, a professor, or even anyone with a PhD. In the spring of my freshman year, while Larry and I were driving to a Hillel conference in Berkeley, he asked me about myself, and I mentioned that I had received a work study grant. He wanted to know where I was going to work, and I said I was not sure. He then suggested I work in his laboratory. I had assumed that all scientists were aloof and pretty snooty, and Larry was nothing like that. So I started in the lab my second year. That decision changed my life. I worked in Larry's lab for the next 4 years, but it was so much more than work. In the lab, I got to develop from washing dishes to cutting barley seeds to doing my own experiments. Most importantly, I was welcome to the family. I went to Debbie's bat mitzvah, graduation parties for Merrill, and threw little Craig around when he was 5 or 6 years old. They became the family I never had. I met my first wife at Hillel, and Larry and Norma were our family. Our daughters considered them as grandparents, and we visited often. When I met Susan, who was anxious to meet Larry to discuss plant science, they warmly welcomed her to my real family. Larry's scientific work helped contribute to our understanding of plant growth and is now considered fundamental to plant scientists. Larry was a pioneer in understanding how plant hormones operate to change the growth and development of plants, an extremely important area, especially now as we look to plants to feed the planet sustainably. His scientific achievements remain essential for understanding the mechanisms of hormone action, and they are quoted in the scientific literature. Plant growth and food production will be the defining issues of the next century, and the results in many ways will rest on his insights. But Larry was not only a highly regarded scientist. He understood and taught that science and the search for truth and understanding is a deeply human endeavor. He taught me that passion was essential to be successful as a scientist, and that understanding the people you work with is as important as understanding the mechanism of action of gibberellic acid. Larry set me on the path to becoming a scientist, and he and Norma remained as family for the next 50 more years. I will miss him, but know deeply that I'm far better because he so profoundly changed my life. I cannot think of anyone who has had more impact on who I am today.
Thank you, Robin, for sharing those words from Dr. Schuster. Thank you. After all that has been said, there is on the one hand so much more that Larry achieved, that he loved, that he lived for, that I could share. And there is also little I can say that would really do any of this any justice. Meeting with the family last week, Rabbi Wolner and I, we were struck by the emotions that were in the room. There was sadness, of course, but the theme that kept coming up again and again, it wasn't sadness, it wasn't loss, it was gratitude. Gratitude for having had Larry as a grandparent, as a father, as a husband. Norma, as you shared, I've had the most wonderful life a person could ever have. You credited that life, and you credit that life to Larry. Meryl, you as the oldest child, as you pointed out, you have known him the longest of the three. But you're the only child to have experienced the great Rappaport relocation, going all the way from Michigan to Davis, which I realize is, in your perspective, the great move, but Larry had a number of moves. He moved from Bronx to Brooklyn, maybe not at the same time, and then to Idaho, to me, Michigan, and then here, and I mean, around the world in between. But this was the move that defined your family, because this is where you have been for generations. As some of us newer arrivals here to Davis need to be reminded, Davis at the time that the Rappaports made their move was not the same Davis as today. Meryl, as you recall, the supermarket not only did not stock sour cream, but they doubted that it existed. Or at least when Larry would ask for it, the clerks heard it as asking for, "Can you point me toward the curdled milk, please?" Can you believe it? The horrors. So why come here? Yes, the opportunity, but also the adventure. Larry was someone who was eager to go out of his comfort zone, to see the world, to try to make sense of something he did not understand. Speaking of not understanding things, I watched a video of Larry recounting his professional work after his retirement, which our esteemed colleague was one of the other interviewer on that. Despite not understanding any of it, I could see his brilliance, the breadth of his knowledge, the passion for knowledge and for understanding how the world worked. Two other things struck me. Despite it being an interview ostensibly about his achievements professionally, this was his emeritus interview at the end of his career. It is supposed to be a document about him. And despite that, he spent a lot of time, a noticeable, inappropriate amount of time praising the work of other people. It was almost like he could not help himself. You as the interviewer, you would mention a name and seemingly involuntarily, Larry would chime in to say what it was he loved about that person and what made them special. He couldn't help it. But the thing that struck me most was about halfway through the video, after he talked about his early love of plants, his passion for understanding dormancy patterns in potatoes. He said, "Vegetable crops is not an attractive sounding field. Everybody knows that." I was struck by this, by someone who is a pioneer in this field, someone who lived for this field, for this work. And reading through Larry's memoir, it became apparent Larry could have chosen to be an author. He could have equally chosen to be an engineer, a politician, a physician. He could have been 100 other things that everyday people could more easily understand. And I am certain he would have succeeded beautifully in any of them. But he chose this field. Yes, because it interested him, but I think for something else. He realized it was doing this work where he could do the greatest good. And his life's work has, as his son Craig noted, is still impacting how we feed the world today. What a remarkable legacy. Craig, when we talked, you also noted that your father would probably brush aside any such praise. He repeated often he didn't have the highest IQ. He had something else. He called it TQ, Tuchus quotient. Thank you, Larry, for giving me my very first opportunity to say Tuchus at a funeral. But for those that don't know Tuchus, well, look it up. But Tuchus quotient, what he meant by that TQ, was sitting down, doing the work, figuring things out, not through brilliance, but through a work ethic. That is where he excelled. We cannot help how much intelligence we are born with. We have the power to decide how hard we work in this world. Larry understood that. Of course, we cannot tell the story of Larry's life without acknowledging the last difficult chapter. Debbie, as you shared, Alzheimer's made him become his essence, full of heart. When speaking was difficult, when expressing himself took tremendous, unimaginable effort, the words he had left readily for everyone, those words were thank you and I love you. He said those to his family, to his friends, to his caregivers, to strangers, to everyone. While none of us can control how Alzheimer's affects us, in this case, I don't think it was an accident. Larry was always appreciative and full of love and full of heart. Raising Craig, his only son, he would teach him that crying and expressing your emotions, they make you more, not less of a man. That memory, Craig didn't share it, it was Lindsay, Craig's daughter. I bring that up because it's further evidence of the generational impact Larry has had. His teachings, his heart, his love has transcended those he raised to the next generation, and I'm sure so many more. We don't usually get much say at our own funeral. And for Larry, he hasn't had the chance to speak for himself before today as well. So it's only fitting that he be allowed to offer the last words. In his memoir written to his family, he writes the following. Judaism is an ancient heritage that offers universal values that we can all live by, regardless of whether we participate in organized religion at all. The values of community, repairing the world through social action and social justice, and treating all beings with compassion and respect are fundamental ways to better relationships and life. So as we prepare to say goodbye to Larry today, let us keep not just his memory, but also his essence alive. The way we do that is by honoring him through our actions. We do that by cherishing the communities we are parts of, by engaging in tikkun olam, the active repair of the world. And we do that by treating everyone with compassion and respect. Help a stranger today. Do it for Larry. I can only imagine that is what he would want. Baruch atah Adonai. Blessed are you, God, for giving us Larry, for a man filled with knowledge, with dedication, with love, with vision, and with righteousness. Zichrono livracha, may his memory be a blessing, and let us say, Amen. It's my honor now to call on the Davis Threshold Singers to please come forward. The Threshold Singers sing to those at thresholds of life. For the past year and a half, they have sung to Larry and to Norma in their home weekly, which has been and was a highlight of Larry's week for the last 18 months.
Dear one, thank you for your love.
Dear one, thank you for all you have done. Dear one, thank you for all you have given. Now it's your time to rest. Dear one, thank you for your love. Dear one, thank you for all you have done. Dear one, thank you for all you have given. Now is your time to rest.
I didn't think I would be able to speak at Dad's funeral, but I wanted to sing because we sang every week with Mom and Dad. And this last song we're going to sing is called Thank You. It's very appropriate because Dad was so full of gratitude. He used to sing this song with us with heart. And we sing it for him, but the family also sings it to all of you for your support and love that we've been feeling so much and will continue to feel. It's very important that you're here and for all of your messages of love. And lastly, thank you for our wonderful family and every piece that every one of us has done our part in the way that we can to be here and to bring him to this point.
Thank you for your loving. Thank you for the times you cared. Thank you for your giving, for all your heart has held and shared. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for your loving. Thank you for the times you cared. Thank you for your giving, for all your heart has held and shared. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for your loving. Thank you for the times you cared. Thank you for your giving, for all your heart has held and shared. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I wanted to just leave a moment for that music to kind of wash over everyone. It was so beautiful. We now have the opportunity to recite the words of Emily Rachamim, praying that Larry's soul will be bound up with God for eternal life. I will read the English translation first, and then I will go ahead and chant the Hebrew. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace with the holy and the pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold him close to you forever, so that his soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May he find a home with you. And may Larry rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. El Male Rachamim, Shochein Bamromi, Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim U'Tahorim, Kizohar Harakia Mazhiri, Et Nishmat Aryeh ben Aharon ve'Elsi, Shehalach la'olamo, Ve'al Harachamim Yastirehu, V'seter Kenafav le'olamim, Ve'yitzror b'tzror ha'chaim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar amen. We are now going to lower the casket into the grave. And as that is happening, as we are here to lay Larry to rest, we'll sing a setting of a Senesh.
So before I ask the pallbearers to please come forward and place your gloves along the length of the casket here. And then once the casket is lowered, we will give you an opportunity to place some sand in the grave if you wish.
Shelo yigamer le'olam, ha'chol ve'hayam, rishvu shel ha'mayim, v'rav ha'shamayim, tfilat ha'adam, ha'chol ve'hayam, rishvu shel ha'mayim, v'rav ha'shamayim, tfilat ha'adam. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer, the heart, the sand, the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. I now want to invite up any family members, especially for the ceremonial act of burial. And in Judaism, this is something that we do with a hesitation. It's something we are obviously devastated to be doing, but it's actually the highest mitzvah there is in all of Judaism because it's the one that can never be repaid. It's the one that you are not doing for thanks or hopes of anything in return, but just simply being with the ones you loved until the very last moment. And so I want to first invite the family up to take part of this ritual of helping lay Larry to rest.
Definitely. Would you like?
This way you heard.
Yeah. Where all his beautiful works.
So ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to place some sand in the grave, you're more than welcome to do so. We're going to start a line right here. So if you'd like to come forward, please, you can pay your respects to the family.
Actually, before we do that, we are going to recite Kadisha Tome, and then people will have an opportunity to add to the grave. Please, if the family will stand up, please, and please come closest to the grave. We will offer the words of Kadisha Tome, the mourner's Kaddish, now that Larry has been returned to the earth. the family, gathers around Larry, I ask that everyone else please rise as well. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shnei Rabba, Bialma, Divarav, Hirute, Biamlif, Malchute, B'chayachon, Ubiamechon, Uchaye, B'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Ubizman, Kari, V'imru, Amen. Yehi Shnei Rabba, Mevarach, Le'olam, Olamei, Omaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitraman, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei, Kudashah, B'rechu. Le'elam, Min Kol Birchata, V'shirata, Tushvatata Benekamata, the Amiram Belman, Imru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, B'chayim Aleinu Ve'Kol Yisrael, Imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Ramav, Huya Aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'Kol Yisrael, Imru, Amen. May the God who brings peace to the high heavens bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all the world, and to all who mourn. And let us together say, Amen. We'll now offer an opportunity for those that wish to help in this final mitzvah, this final commandment that we can do on Larry's behalf by helping return him to the earth. You may do so at this time with the buckets on either side of the grave.
You didn't have to take the job. You can do the job. Thank you very much.